Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to the Accursed. Where there's society, there's crime. Where there's someone willing to make an honest living, there are other people who want to take advantage of naivety, who want to profit off short-sightedness, who wish to undermine the hard work of others. Where there's order, there's chaos, just rippling underneath the surface, waiting to plume up like a volcanic eruption. We are, of course, talking about the Faceless. Oh, the Faceless, they are such a gorgeous mystery. I do love talking about them. I love the rumour, I love the innuendo, I love the mysteries surrounding this family. But I have to confess something. I don't know that I've ever met one. Or if I have, I've not been able to identify them. This is part of the thrill of talking about the Faceless, you see, because they do not declare their identities. So it's different if you're in a crew with one of them. They may reveal who they are to you, though they may also go by a false name. They're very fond of code names, monikers, epithets, and the like. But let's say they do tell their crewmates, their bond mates, who exactly they are, beneath all the masks. Well, they'll have you swear some kind of blood oath that you won't reveal it to anyone else. Now, a blood oath may sound very childish, it may sound like the kind of thing that can't be enforced, but remember here that you are dealing with sorcerers. Not just that, you're dealing with the sorcerer family that is probably most inclined to work in concert to punish those who have wronged them. What do I mean by that? Well, if you break this blood oath, if you happen to reveal an identity of one of the Faceless, you can prepare. You may not have time to, but you should prepare for a hailstorm of hell that will rain down upon you. The Faceless don't take kindly to betrayal. They detest a rat. No family has a more tangled web of origins, come to think of it. Ask a Reeve, and I know several, and they might tell you the story about how the very first Faceless was the biblical Judas, claiming his coin for betraying the Christ, and it was in that way that he first experienced sorcery and divine punishment. This was the pact, you see. Now, as you can imagine, the Iscariot family of Hungary are very quick to stamp down on this rumour. They will say, no, you have their origins muddled, entirely muddled. You see, the first of the Faceless were an offshoot, a cadet family, if you like, of the Borgias, they will tell you. An underground equivalent to those Borgias who were playing the roles of cardinals, merchant princes, and popes. Nothing to do with Judas there. Now, the Verare, they weighed in here and say that the Faceless, they came up from the muck. They were always scum. All the years they were petty hedge sorcerers, and yet they made a deal with some grand devil to have a little more power in their hands. Yet they never earned their title. They never earned their magic. You can perhaps tell that the Verare have a tangled history of their own with the Faceless, which I spoke a little about in my video about that family. They're not the best of friends, it's fair to say. There's a long-standing enmity. Then there are the Archivists. Now, if there's any family who would know the truth of the Faceless origins, it would be the Archivists. After all, they know everyone's secrets. But the Archivists, they're not telling. Perhaps because they know there are few secrets quite as deadly as the Faceless origins. And they know that if they were to ever divulge this secret, well, the cost would be high, so the reward would have to be significantly higher. So far, no reward has been presented yet that could allow the Archivists to start revealing the identities of select Faceless, let alone the entire family's origin. So, what are we to make of them? Well, very little when it comes to their beginnings, though we can accurately point at their activities day to day. with a mixture of awe and fear. You see, they have their fingers embedded in the Cosa Nostra, the Bratva, Triads, and low-level, nominally unaffiliated gangs working in streets. Anything that looks like organised crime is going to attract the Faceless because it's the best way for them to channel their magic and get what they want. Keep in mind that while they may present themselves as a faceless, united front, the average faceless doesn't have the knowledge of what their elders seek to do, what the grand enterprise is for their family, so they will embark in crimes at a strictly street level, whether it's theft, whether it's assaults, or even hits on other criminals, or indeed bringing down someone, exposing the crimes of, let's say, a CEO, a CFO, a politician. They're very fond of that. And it isn't because they're an altruistic family of sorcerers. Don't get me wrong, they're not. They may sometimes do altruistic things. At least they may benefit others, but not for altruistic reasons. You see, the Faceless will work to undermine your chief financial officers, who may be, let's say, leeching a little bit of the company's profits, a little more than they are due, not because they detest embezzlement, but because they know that by doing so they can put one of their own agents, one of their own sorcerers, or one of the contacts they can manipulate in the place of that disgraced CFO. They are very clever. They're very cunning. The Faceless haven't existed for as long as they have without long-term plans. You see, they are a defensive family. They're a hidden group. They have to be defensive. But that doesn't mean they are averse to risk. In fact, the sacrifices that the Faceless make to gain more power, they run in the realms of personal injury, safety, family security. Therefore, they have to overreach to get what it is they want, to get the most out of their sorcerer's enterprises. It's an interesting conundrum, and one I've yet to unravel, how they walk that line, how they find the balance of overreaching and stepping back. And my best theory is this. Since time immemorial, criminal enterprises have operated like a pyramid. The eldest, the most powerful, of course, on the top, they will delegate tasks to those down the bottom, and they will take the grandest share. That's not unusual. Most companies, most families, most criminal groups do this. What the Faceless do is they persist in agitating those beneath them. They know that they need to risk attacks from within. And they know that once they have the power, they will punish those who sought to rise up against them. The Faceless are very fond of setting themselves on themselves. What do I mean by that? Well, if a Faceless says to another Faceless, you know, my father, our father, is getting a little big for his boots. He's actually harming the family. I think it's time we took him down. The Faceless that our speaker is addressing isn't going to necessarily lean in and say, yeah, you know what, you're right. They're going to think, this is a test of my loyalty. This person is testing to see if I'm loyal to the family. So the first thing they'll do is stand up and say, how dare you say this about our father? And then they will run off to father and say, did you hear what this person was saying about you? Because it's a way of courting favour. It creates a constant underbelly of chaos within the family itself that in turn creates a kind of pseudo-stability. This constant state of inter-family agitation has been running for longer than I know. The greatest mystery of the Faceless is how long this family has existed, or more accurately, how long this face of the Faceless family has existed. Is it the same Faceless family that existed last year, a decade ago, a century ago? When you start going into millennia, it seems very unlikely that we are dealing with the same Faceless that first founded this sorcerer's family, but who knows? Not us, and I would wager that most low-level Faceless don't know either. Who's pulling the strings? It's A very good question. Maybe you've heard of the Kaiser's gold robbery. Maybe, maybe not. See, the Faceless have been very good about not letting other people know where they strike, but I may not know any Faceless personally, but I do know several Reeves, and one of them, lovely lady by the name of Kat Mortimer. She's fantastic, always wonderful, especially when divulging information. She studied that post-Great War period, 1918 to about 1936. She likes a bit of archaeology, and she was doing one of these battlefield tours, examining war graves, trying to find more war graves, and so on. But in so doing, she stumbled upon one of the great faceless mysteries. You see, there were always rumours that when the Kaiser left Germany in 1918 and headed to the Netherlands, that he lost the vast majority of his wealth. So this was put down historically to carelessness, to his own aides betraying him, to him not actually having much wealth to end the war with. But the truth is the Faceless were involved every single step of the way. There was around 20 faceless sorcerers operating at all levels of the German government in 1918. And not just the government, of course, the monarchy. That's where it's most important. Because they accompanied the Kaiser all the way from Germany, all the way to the Netherlands in his exile. And as they travelled, and it's not a long journey, they stole a bauble here, they stole a necklace there. It was a huge conspiracy. Kaiser Wilhelm II, when he arrived in the Netherlands, he was completely aghast. He had no idea what had become of all of these family treasures. Well, according to Kat and her research, the Faceless stole pretty much every object of value in that train, while forcing all of the humans around them to focus only on the Kaiser. They eroded every bond between every guard that was there. They have the sorcery to do this, so no one trusted each other. They just kept focusing on the king, while everyone else, all these Faceless, these other 20, were busy transmuting gold into bricks, turning necklaces into sheafs of paper. And as they did so, their personal injuries increased, their mania got worse, because the Faceless pay the cost just the same as any other sorcerer. But when the train finally arrived in the Netherlands, every bauble, every bead, every gold bar, every necklace now looked like a useless item. Those that were still there looked like they were there for weight. Lumps of coal, lumps of brick, blocks, nothing that could be considered valuable. And so the guards were immediately commanded to retrace our steps. Whoever stole this couldn't have got far. The Faceless volunteered to get rid of all this debris, and so they took it away. They were never caught. Of course, they transmuted the bricks back to gold. They turned the paper back into jewels. But there was a cost to all this. The Faceless, well, they were bearing injuries. They were now manic, with obsession over this treasure. And they turned on each other. That's Kat's theory. They turned on each other. And how did she find out about all this? Well, in her belief, based on some letters she has found, a couple of trinkets here and there, and of course, getting a friendly Gaki to speak to a few troubled phantasms, her working tells her this. She was excavating a battlefield, and she found what she thought was a war grave. Sure enough, there are plenty of them in the Low Countries, and the genuine war dead were sent, their names, their identities, where they could be found, were sent to the Menin Gate to be added to that fine monument in Ypres. But then there were these others, unknown, and she didn't recognise them as soldiers. They weren't wearing uniforms. So she had them classified as unknown soldiers, but she became curious. She spoke to the plants, she spoke to the dead, she examined their belongings. Here's what she discovered. Only a small handful of those Faceless made it out of the Netherlands alive. They certainly didn't get much further than Belgium. All of the others, probably 16, 17 of them, were murdered, betrayed by their own family, with all the riches going to a small corner. Quite a heist, quite a betrayal, and of course, no one would know about it. And she has been piecing together this puzzle of faceless activities in that interwar period. I have to say, I'm a bit worried for her, because if the Faceless, any of the Faceless that were involved are still around because of various magical means, they will probably not want this information released, but it's already out there. And they very rarely punish people once there's no point to doing so. The problem is, if Kat can find anything else out, when she gets a bit between her teeth, she starts champing, she doesn't stop. Anyway, don't expect much honour among this band of thieves. Acquisition is the name of the game when it comes to the Faceless, and none do it better than this family. If only I could find one to interview.